as well. So like I said, I appreciate you doing this, and looking forward to catching up with you a little bit, obviously, and kind of just hearing how things are going down at Old Dominion and kind of talk training. So just to give these guys and everybody else that's going to listen kind of a little bit of a background, what's your current title and job and role and responsibilities down at ODU, and then kind of what's been your path to get to that point?
Yeah, so my name is Chad Snodgrass. I'm currently the Director of Sports Performance and head football strength and conditioning coach at Old Dominion University. I've been here since January of 22, so going into my fourth off season. But prior to that, I was at West Virginia University for 10 years. I was an assistant director of strength and conditioning there. And then prior to that, I was a graduate assistant at West Virginia. And then I played football at West Virginia University from 2007 to 2011. So I was there for a long time, met a lot of great people. So that kind of brought me to here, just being able to intern as an athlete. And while I was playing, I interned for 3 years there, worked with every sport on campus while I was an intern. And then other than football, and then once I graduated, I became full-born intern. I was looking for any graduate assistant job in the country. I emailed every person you could think of. Was very fortunate to be hired as a graduate assistant at West Virginia University and worked with Olympics for my first 2 years. And once I got done with that, I went back to just football only and worked for Mike Joseph there. And then, as I was saying, became head strength coach here at Old Dominion, January 22. From here, I oversee all sports. There's an Olympic director of sports performance. He oversees everything outside of the weight room that I'm currently in. In this weight room, we train football, rowing, women's lacrosse, and field hockey. I've got 3 full-time assistants and currently looking to fill a paid internship position who just works with football. So each of the full-time assistants each have their own sport. So a lot of my position revolves around coaching coaches, which I love coaching. It doesn't matter what it is. You can ask my kids. It doesn't matter what we do at home when they train or if we're doing day-to-day operations at our house. It all comes back to coaching. I love coaching. Doesn't matter what the aspect of it is, but I love coaching coaches. That is very rewarding. I know this job is a lot of give, and we're here to serve, but being able to coach coaches is something I truly love and appreciate, because sometimes it's hard to take advice from a peer or someone who's relatively the same age as you, but it just creates thicker skin and more calloused hands. And to be able to help develop coaches to reach their goals the same way you're helping develop athletes to reach their goals as well. So coaching coaches, but then also being able to have my own team, but having my staff, we work hand in hand in everything we go through. So we plan together, we program together. They have an equal say in everything we do. More ownership an individual has, the more they'll care about it. So being able to have my staff involved in every decision we make, when training football and when training their own teams as well. I'm not scared to jump out on the floor and help them coach their teams as well. So there's no job too big, no job too small for anybody in our facility. But involving like day-to-day operations, there's a lot that goes into it. So if you want to hear about everything we do training-wise, we can do that. Or if there's certain aspects of that you want to do. Now, if anybody has questions, I'm going to be pissed if you have a question and don't ask it. So if you're on this call and you're on it just to be on it, you're an idiot. You should be on here to gain knowledge and to get better. I'm trying to learn as well. Like, this is supposed to be me like talking about, all right, what do I do? All right, well, I want to learn from you all as well. So if I talk about something that you disagree or you want to know more about, and if you don't ask or chime in, So I always tell our athletes the same thing. Either you're too stupid to do it or you don't care enough. So it's going to be one of those. So you better get your ass off the fucking pause button and jump in this damn thing.
With that being said, I'm going to jump in. No, I appreciate that. That was awesome. A couple things that you said that I definitely took some notes on. Number one, you were there, in my eyes, the glory days of recent Mountaineer football history. You were a player and a coach there. You would have been there for what, the Fiesta Bowl, Orange Bowl, kind of the quote unquote glory days, in my opinion. And that's obviously how I met. Just so everybody kind of knows this, how we met. I was an intern while you were, I think you had probably just finished your GA, or were still. I forget. I think you were done your GA because. What was his name? That was the GA at the time. He does tactical stuff now. I'm blanking on his name.
Sean Healy.
Yeah, Sean, exactly. But I think at the time you were still helping with soccer a little bit when I was there. I think that's when you guys had just started kind of getting some of the GPS stuff, if I remember correctly. And obviously Mike was, like you mentioned, Mike, just being around him for the short time that I was able to be around him and Daryl, both huge influence on just me, even now, 10 years later. And I think with that being said, that's kind of the one thing that I definitely want to make sure we touch on. I love the coaching, the ownership aspect, the care. I completely agree. And those are the people that are on this that have worked with me. Like that's something that I definitely take a lot of pride in, of making sure that we're all kind of building each other up and that we all give the equal amounts of fuck about all the shit that we're trying to get accomplished. But can my biggest thing that I took away from Mike and Daryl was rep integrity. And I know that you guys preach that down at Old Dominion just from the stuff that I've seen. And then obviously when Daniel was down there talking to Daniel and staying in touch with him. Can you kind of dig in a little bit of that about rep integrity, what it means to you, kind of how that's foundational, and then any other standards, principles, philosophies that you kind of take into it, whether it's from the actual X's and O's of should we front squat or back squat, or whether it's more from like the philosophical side of things?
Yeah, so a lot of it depends on the athletes you're training and what their needs are. So in terms of like exercise selection and that, they all work. Everyone has their whys of why they use certain aspects of exercise selection and whatnot. Like, do we clean? Do we not clean? I don't back squat. I only front squat. Okay, everyone's got their reasons. And who am I to argue with what they choose to do? As long as you've got a sense of discipline, accountability, and a real why, to a scientifically driven and research-backed why of why you're choosing something, then that's all you. So philosophy-wise, I think that to mitigate or ignore a certain exercise can become ignorant. Like, you need to research every exercise of why you do it, why you don't do it. All right, this works for us at this point in time. Well, I've got 60 new transfers that might not work anymore. All right, the training ages are shifting at all times. So you're going to have different, like you call it X's and O's, sets, reps, timing of year. We've got a really young team. Do we need to build more size and muscle tissue? We've got an older team. Do we need to focus more on power output and generating force? So different times a year will require different aspects of training as well. So with all that being said, there's different styles of training. I look at strength conditioning like religion. Everyone's got their own religion. All right. As long as you're following it and you understand there's different ways to skin a cat, but you need to have your own, but not be closed-minded to what everybody else is thinking. But you have to have a standard, and the standard is standard no matter who it is. And you've got to uphold the standard for yourself before you create the standard for your athletes. So talking about like rep integrity, the rep is the most simple form of strength training. All right. It doesn't matter if you've got 3 sets of 8 or 4 sets of 5, because if you're not doing every fucking rep correctly and with maximum levels of intent, then you're wasting your time. So we talk about rep integrity all the time in West Virginia. That's what we bled, and that's what we continue to bleed at Old Dominion. Every rep is done correctly. If it's not, we're going to do it until it's done correctly. Who can jump in and talk about what the calculation of work is? Anybody? This is like day one intern.
Somebody other than me.
Yeah. Where the fuck's Daniel at?
Force times distance. Work is force times distance.
There we go. So force times distance. So how much work is, or how much force is done over a certain amount of distance. So if an athlete's going to squat 24 inches down, 24 inches up, all right. But that standard needs to be set every time. All right, where are we going to squat to? You're going to squat as low as you possibly can with great technique. All right, are you going to say, hey, we only teach quarter squat? Okay, well, it needs to be the same every single time. Do I agree with that? No, but everyone's got to have their way of doing it, but there needs to be a standard done, for each one of them. But every rep is going to be like building a house. So when you build this house, you're going to want to make sure all of the wood is cut correctly. All of the nails and screws are going to be put into each selected piece of lumber correctly. So when we're talking about each rep, there's going to be all those nails that are going to build up this house. And if you've got thousands and thousands and millions of reps and nails put into this house of what you've planned for, and you've only got 900,000 actual nails in there, that house is eventually going to fall. If you need 1 million and you've only got 900,000, the house will eventually fall. Don't know when, don't know how, but it'll eventually fall. The athlete will suffer the most, but eventually your standard and your reputation and your culture will slowly trickle away as well. So talking about like rep integrity and why we do it, the rep is the most simple form. All right, so you develop the knowledge base of why we're doing each singular rep. All right, then we're going to develop the motor ability, and then we're going to develop an autonomic response. So making sure that is automatic every single day. So making sure we know exactly how much work is being done with each rep, that goes into what we're going to be prescribing to each athlete. So if we're prescribing 20 reps, all right, all those 20 reps need to be done to the fullest capability. So the technique needs to be correct. The overall range of motion needs to be correct. The intent or intensity and violence in every single rep, doesn't matter what sport you're training, there's going to have to be intent when you touch a barbell or touch a weight. Doesn't matter if it's fencing or if it's football, if it's field hockey, it doesn't matter. We preach the exact same integrity and standard to every single sport that is trained on this campus. All right, so we're talking about why we do every rep. We're going to use the chin up. The chin up is one of my favorite exercises for a lot of reasons, but the main reason is because it's the easiest to see when you talk about the all three different phases of each rep. So does anybody know the 3 phases of a repetition? Anybody?
Concentric, eccentric, isometric.
There we go. I know that sounds like day one stuff, all right, but that stuff is incredibly important. So when we talk about a chin up, you talk about a dead hang. We're talking about full range of motion. When you go all the way up, your chin goes above the bar. All right. Now we coach every single athlete to pause every rep, and we talk about putting your name on every single rep. So we make our athletes say their name at the top of every chin up, at the top of every shrug. All right. You're coaching that with every single repetition. All right. And on the way down, we're going to control our negative in a controlled fashion. We call it earning the negative, because majority of your strength is going to be gained within that negative, and we put a lot of emphasis on that. Now, we teach the athletes why we do this and how we do this. We don't just say, hey, we're going to do that. So we take a lot of pride in owning each single rep. We talk about putting your name on it, but the rep is your resume. So we always talk about, all right, well, if somebody would walk by and watch you train and not know you, what are they going to get from that snippet of watching you train? Are they going to see half reps? Are they going to see uncontrolled reps? They're going to see all the reps being completed, right? So we talk about building your resume and building your person, all right, putting your name on every single rep, but having pride and ownership of every single rep, because your each rep is your work, and how much work will you do? All right, and that's going to represent who you are and who you're not. What do you stand for? So we put a lot of emphasis on each individual rep. So by being able to achieve all three phases on every single rep, we're putting ourselves in better position to gain more muscle tissue. We're going to have more muscle breakdown. So to create more muscle breakdown, we're going to give ourselves the opportunity to create more cross-sectional area, to give ourselves the opportunity or to create more power down the road. Right? So it's not just because there's a real rhyme and a real scientifically driven reason behind every single rep. So it's no, I'm going to have a high CNS day. I'm going to have a low CNS day. Okay, well, every rep, we need to look further into that. All right, is every rep going to be designed to support what the goal of the day is? All right, and once you have that mindset and that standard set, then it becomes automatic. It becomes a standard for the entire team. But also, that's going to help in creating like discipline and accountability for your team as a whole. All right, so explaining how every single rep matters and how we put our name on every single rep. All right, that's going to put ourselves in a better position to create better competitors. Again, doesn't matter what sport, but it's going to put us in a position to create better competitors. All right. And any aspect that's below your standard, whatever it is, that's going to create laziness. And lazy people are losers, and they're going to get you beat, and they're going to be a non-factor in competition. All right. But the last aspect is setting the standard and creating it and setting the standard. But knowing that if the standard is not met, there needs to be a repercussion on the spot. I talk about this a lot, about how there's two different scenarios that I go back to when we talk about not upholding the standard. When I was 5 years old, all right, I was visiting my grandfather, and he is the toughest person that I've ever met. He's got Silver Star. He's got 3 Purple Hearts. He's in a lot of battles. Got a lot of confirmed kills in different wars. I pissed the bed in his spare bedroom, and he grabbed me by the back of my neck and rubbed my face in it like a dog. All right. I will tell you this. That was the last time I ever pissed the bed. I can promise that even in college, never did it. All right. So I think about that. All right. And I think about my kids. So I've got a 10 and a 12-year-old. And if they would break a rule in our house, right, would I wait a day? Would I wait a week to punish them or have their repercussions? If I did, what would they learn from that? They would learn that what I'm going to tell them, what I'm going to do doesn't really matter. So it's the same thing in aspects of training. Right. You're in charge of making sure that they understand your standard that you've set. You've got to uphold that. So in our weight room, you will hear not a rep, not a rep, not a rep, not a rep. That's a rep. You can start your set now. So when incoming freshmen transfers, they train by themselves, so we can teach them the standards and teach them what a rep is and what a rep isn't. So they know day one, this is how we're going to train, and this is why we're going to train that way. So when we talk about squatting to depth, right, we will sit there and we will go on a cadence, and we will teach them where they need to hit depth at every single time. All right. And then once they've learned that over a couple sets, then they will get free reign. All right. And if it's not done to the tempo, not done to the standard, it's not done at the correct depth, they hear not a rep, not a rep, not a rep, until you hear that's a rep. You can start your set. Same thing with chin-ups, same thing with rows, you name it, it's all the same way. But rep integrity is our cornerstone, is our foundation of training, because it talks about the singular rep, and there's nothing more important than each rep. Doesn't matter the exercise, because if it's clean or snatch or whatever variation you're looking at, there's one way to do it. That's how you set as a coach. This is the way we're going to do it, and that's it. That's fine. You've got to make sure you understand why you're doing it, how you're going to do it, how you're going to coach it, how you're going to teach it. You're going to have different variations of how you're going to coach it and how you're going to teach it. But the standard can never change. But that's something that we bleed at Old Dominion. I know West Virginia bleeds it. So that's something that believe very cold-heartedly, and that's something that I'll live and die with. Does anybody have any questions on repetition, integrity, and any questions on that aspect?
What do you guys do for punishment regarding rep integrity? Like, let's say a guy mouths off. What do you guys do in the weight room, and then how do you tell that to the football coach or sport coach, and then how do they deal with it at Old Dominion?
So our coach, like everything we do here is 1-0. So rep integrity is not just in the weight room here. That's with everything we do, and that goes on field, in the classroom. Everything they do is considered rep integrity. So we talk about owning your reps. That's not just in the weight room. That standard is throughout the entire building. So when we're on the field and someone does a rep incorrectly, the coach will call them back and tell them that's not a rep. So it's not just something they only hear in here. That is something they hear everywhere. And that's not, I'll be honest with you, that's not like something that just happened overnight. It took a better part of probably 18 months to get everyone all in on this. Now, in the weight room, they didn't have a choice. But the more we talked about it, the more we showed about it, the more our guys were bought into it. All right. The more our coaches were all in on it, and they started using it because it makes sense. It doesn't matter what your profession is, because how you do anything is how you do everything. If you're going to do a half a rep in the weight room, you're going to do a half a rep on the field or on the court. All right. If you're going to do a half a rep in the weight room, you're going to do half an assignment in the classroom. It's the same thing. So the standard is the standard wherever they go in this building. So if we tell someone not a rep, they know it's not a rep. And if they want to mouth back, then we're going to have issues that we'll handle on the spot. But to be honest, we don't really have that issue. Our guys are all in on it, and our guys will, especially with football, will handle that internally. We don't have to. There's been very few times where I've had to kick someone out of the weight room, and it's not been because of their repetition integrity. So having your sport coach completely bought in, shows who you are as a coach, because you have to explain to them the importance of it. And if you can't get them to buy in, either you don't really believe it and couldn't explain it well enough, or you couldn't explain it well enough, or you don't really believe it. So it's one of those, and it becomes back to you. You got to look yourself in the mirror with that. But if we have someone mouth off, we've got a high standard. What we call it RTT, ready to train. And if your lift starts at 9 a.m., at 8:55, you better have eaten, weighed in, correct clothing on, and your shoes tied. And that's with all sports. All right. And if you're not ready, then you've got down-ups on the spot. Now, different sports will have different punishments or disciplinary factors. Like football has down-ups. Other sports will have push-ups. Some will have sit-ups, but there is a repercussion on the spot for that. All right. Did I answer your question? If I didn't,
Yes,
tell
yes,
me,
sir.
oh, you didn't answer it.
No, you did. Yes, sir.
I think obviously, again, I feel like anybody that's worked with me and the guys that are on here, I know Daniel texted me and said he had to bounce. We had a group coming in, but I mean, 90% of what you said, I swear, I just literally just tell them every day the same things. The one thing that you did say that I haven't really ever said and hasn't stuck out to me or haven't thought about it that way is like the idea of like putting a resume every single day. Like that's something that, and again, those of you that are on here, we kind of talk about that from a coaching side is like every single day as a coach is an interview. Every single rep in the weight room as an athlete is a chance to get better. Every rep on the field. And again, that's something I've said too. I always talk about how the weight room is like a microcosm of sports or the real world of like, if you can't listen to simple directions and you can't give us a squeeze at the top of your pull-ups, you're probably the same guy that's jumping off sides on the football field or the same guy that's skipping class, whatever it is. So I think I completely agree with you on that. One thing that probably if I had to kind of like brag the most about anything that we've done here at Fairmont, and I've been here for 4 years, coming up in a couple months too, is when our women's basketball team's playing and they get somebody fouls on a fast break, and our girls will get up flexing, that get an and one, they'll get up flexing, and they'll yell Fairmont State squeeze, because that's what we talk about squeezing your rows, squeezing your pull-ups, and like that's what sets us apart from especially all the other schools in this conference, all the other schools in our region, of just that we do, everybody squats, everybody does chin-ups, everybody does whatever. It's just how we do it, why we do it, and making sure that we're taking pride in those things. So I love to hear that it's not something that, like, sometimes I get stuck in my own bubble, and it's like one of those things where, like, I love hearing that that's the same precedent that you guys are setting down there, because it makes me realize that we're doing the right things. So it's awesome to hear that. I do kind of want to jump a little bit to just like, your year-round training program. Obviously, you guys will be coming back here in a couple of weeks in the spring to start your spring prep, and then you have your summer, which obviously we don't have summer at the Division II level, which we don't have mandatory summer at Division II level, which sucks. But what's kind of your weekly schedule in the spring? How many days are you in the weight room? How many days are you doing field work? What does, when practices start, how do you adjust to that? Like when spring ball starts, how do you adjust to that? And then kind of just maybe lead that a little bit into the summer. And then, one thing that I'm always a big believer in is fall camps, the 2 hardest weeks of the year. And especially at our level, we don't even get the athletes here mandatory. So like they come in, some of these kids haven't touched the weight all summer. So it's like, I'm always trying to pick the brains of people that kind of get to have their athletes around all summer, just to make sure that I'm at least giving them the tools over the summer that they at least have the opportunity to be able to do those things, whether they're here in person or whether they're home. So just kind of start off with the spring and then kind of tied into a little bit of what the summer prep looks like going into fall camp.
Yeah. So in winter, we're going to have roughly anywhere from 30 to 50 new athletes in regards to football. Every winter, you'll have anywhere from 20 to 30, even 40 in the summer. So it just depends on time of year. So with how that is developing, you're getting sometimes a lot of older guys, but you're getting people who are untrained. So using the first couple weeks to really fine tune and see what we kind of have to work with. Now, we already have a plan set, but plans can change, and you're going to have to be able to adapt to what you're seeing with the kind of athletes that are coming in. So we will have different plans just in case if we get a ton of people with low training age, or we're getting a lot of people with higher training ages. But to be honest, I prefer them not knowing anything, because we'll get a lot of guys who are coming from Power 4 or things of that nature, and they think what they've done in the past is the best way to do it. So you got to show them, this is the way we're going to do it, and these are our standards. So in the winter, the first 4 weeks, we'll have 8 weeks training. 7 of those are countable. Our discretionary weeks, our teams in the past have done a great job of being accountable on themselves. We're over 90% of our team accountable in our discretionary times. So that helps us entering in the off season and on a good start. But everyone is motivated the first 3 weeks. So everyone's always ramped up coming back, especially if you don't go to a bowl game, which we're not. So you're going to get a bunch of guys that are super amped up and motivated to be here. Now, I don't believe in motivation. I think motivation is very temporary. From weeks 4 through 7/8, those are the ones that are thriving and the people that are most disciplined. That's what it really comes down to. But the first 4 weeks, having one of those discretionary, we will look at 4 days in the weight room, 4 actual training days. So we'll go upper body, lower body. We'll have what we call a weakness Wednesday, and then we'll have a lower or upper body, and then we'll finish the week with lower body strength training. Now we will weightlifting. We only do the clean. We do different variations of the clean. So we will clean twice a week. We will have on Mondays, that'll be our acceleration day. Our max velocity day is what it'll transition to. We'll have resisted running, different aspects. We use timing gates every week to create more competitiveness. So we will time guys in their 10s, 15s, 20s, whatever we're running that week. We will have that to create more competition. Now, we will also, those are called like race days for us. So to create faster athletes, you have to have intent with every single step. Just like if you want to be strong, you have to have intent with every single rep. So the more competition you create, the more intent the athlete will have running. And we shame people who don't compete. We breathe the praise the winner, encourage the loser, but we shame those that don't compete. So if a guy we don't think competed, our team will let them know that they didn't compete. It's okay to lose as long as you're competing. We'll create a winner out of you eventually. We'll overhead press, we'll bench press, we'll squat, we'll deadlift, just like everybody else. But like Adam said, it's how we're doing it is what separates us, is how we believe what separates us. So on Mondays, our acceleration day, that'll be our main jump training day. It'll be more single leg based. We'll bound, we'll stiff legged bound, create progressions for that. The first 3 weeks, we'll spend a lot of time just marching against resisted weight, against resisted running. We'll transition into more just free base running. Again, we'll always time on Monday. That's our race day. We'll come in upper body strength training. So we'll spend time at this time of year. We're trying to create a base level of strength, but also create a base level of conditioning. In the weight room, we don't walk. We are on a mission from the second we're in there. So everywhere we go, we are on the hop. We are always running. So if you're getting a drink, you're running there and you're running back. All right, from set to set, you're running everywhere you go. So if the only time you're allowed to stand and breathe is when you're spotting, and you better be in the rep with the guys that are at your rack. Be in the rep with them. Doesn't matter what the exercise is. And then on Tuesday, we will start in the weight room. We will clean. That will be our main clean day. This is when we'll see our higher percentages eventually. This will be a full clean. We coach our guys. We don't call it the power clean. We call it the clean. So we don't coach them to catch it in a certain spot. So if you call it a power clean, then you should be catching in the power position. We call it the clean. So if you got to go to the basement to get it, go to the basement and get it. If you can catch it higher, you catch it higher. But it just depends on the relative load or relative rep that you're in. And then Wednesday, we call it the Weakness Wednesday. So after every season, we sit down with coordinators, athletic training, head coach, and we develop what were our weaknesses. All right. So our weaknesses this year were our eye discipline, our power, what we call a power stance, our having weight distributing the balls, the feet, knees inside the toes, with a flat back. Those were our 2 biggest weaknesses in regards to football. And then we take our major injuries, our main injuries that are recurring from the athletic training. We develop what we call Weakness Wednesday. So we'll spend time developing and trying to craft those weaknesses and make those our strengths. So it depends on what the weaknesses are, and that'll develop our plan. So it'll change year to year, and we'll go on 3-week waves with that, developing and trying to create strengths out of those weaknesses. We also use that as more of like a recovery day. And then on Thursday, that'll be our acceleration, deceleration day. So we're teaching intro to cutting. How do we cut? How do we stop, start? The nuts and bolts of foot placement, what our shin angle should be, our depth of our hips and where our shoulders should be in line, how we're cutting. We'll start on the field. We'll go into that. And then we will come inside. We will do a variation of cleans those days. So it could be from the hang, be from different pause positions. Right now, we think, or what we know is our weakest part of the clean is where we're at when the bar passes the knee, which is with most people, but that's our weakest part, or as of right now. So we're going to spend more time in that area, again, to create better better explosion, better hip extension for us. So we'll spend more time in that area. Our final day on Friday is lower body. We'll squat, we'll hip press, we'll do things that are hard, and then we'll condition at the end. The conditioning is more taxing on a Tuesday than what it would be on a Friday. We're covering more distance base on Friday, more just aerobic base, and then on Tuesday, our main conditioning is the hardest conditioning day, depending on the time of year would have picked, what conditioning transpires that. But for our linemen and our skill guys, they train not differently all year round, but there will be differences in what their strength training protocols will look like. Their combos, which is our linebackers, our tight ends, they will have different aspects of training. Our skill guys being running backs, receivers, corners, and safeties. Again, their training will look different than everybody else's. Now, our quarterbacks will be different. Our specialists, our kickers, punters, theirs will also be different. Now, the end goal will be the same. All right, injury resilient. We're trying to build baseline conditioning, build baseline of strength, increase muscle size, muscle tissue, be more durable. But the pathway is going to look a little different. So we talk about the first 3 weeks, we're just building strength and we're building size. We'll use plus sets on bench press, on squat. And then when we get in the hip press, we call that the lie detector because we'll do sets of 20 in there. I know there's all kinds of arguments saying, well, that's dangerous for athletes and stuff like that. Yeah, everything's dangerous in here. Bench press is dangerous. Squatting is dangerous. All right, well, we're trying to build toughness as a skill, and the only way to increase your toughness is to put people in tough situations. And what we found is putting people in the hip press and going to near failure is creating and exposing toughness or lack thereof toughness. Does anyone want to dive in deeper of how that first 4 weeks is kind of split up? Are you guys good with kind of how I laid it out for you?
I was going to follow up with just the idea of what do you guys, so when you get these new guys, and this is kind of going to be a question I was going to get to eventually anyway, when you get these new guys in with the way the transfer portal is and all that now, how are you like prescribing loads? Like, I don't know if you guys have velocity-based stuff there. Are you going off that? Are you just basically, I mean, day one, you're probably not having them max out because you don't know if their rep integrity is good enough or not. So how are you kind of prescribing loads? And then also, when you guys are on the field, are you guys wearing you guys wearing GPS? Or are you guys like monitoring volume right out of the gate to kind of progress that throughout the whole spring? And again, same thing with like these guys coming in, like how are you introducing them to, not only the what load they should be doing, but why maybe they're doing more or less volume on Tuesday versus Friday on the field work with the sprints and all that. Like, I guess that's my biggest thing is kind of tying into the transfer stuff of like, how are you able to do that? Start a winter block and then also start a summer block when you're getting all these new guys coming in. How quickly are you able to kind of get accurate load prescriptions?
You won't. We don't one rep max. We'll get close. And I don't think anything replaces the coach's eye. So a coach is responsible for that. And we call it when guys first get here, transfers, new enrollees, they are in maximum security. They have to earn their way out to go to general population. So they will train in very small groups, separate from everybody else, and they're learning how to train. Now, some guys will graduate faster than others. Everyone starts body weight. Then you get a barbell, and we prescribe that thereon. Now, if it's an older guy, we'll ask him, hey, what have you maxed or what have you relatively done? All right, and they'll tell us, all right, well, I squatted 585. All right, you're going to work off this 405 percentage right now, and you're going to show me how well that works. But it's all slow cooked, it's all timing, and it's slowly progressed. They got to understand, how we want it done. And again, some guys, 3 days and they're out. They understand it. We had a guy that came from South Florida, who I know the strength coach there very well, and very similar aspects and styles of training. He was able to progress a lot faster than what others would. And we've had guys come from really big programs that were in maximum security for 6 to 8 weeks. They couldn't get out because they couldn't handle the training that what we were prescribing at lower loads and lower volume to be able to handle what everyone else was. So they just had to stay in. You have to do that. I'm very fortunate. There's 5 of us that work with football, so I can dedicate one person to take those guys and have it in a very small group, because we cap our groups at 30. So there's always small groups entailed with that. Now we do wear GPS. We wear them anytime we run. Anytime we run, we're wearing those. And for our progression from winter into spring ball, we were taking what we did last year in spring ball, and we were making percentage and systematic progressions to lead us up to where we need to get to on a weekly and positional volume base. So our skill guys will run more than our combos. Combos run more than the linemen. Linemen will spend more time pushing sleds and doing more, I guess you could call it GPP work, to get more out of their conditioning as well. But it's all based off needs analysis. So we'll trace that back. All right, this is where our perceived load, this was our distance, these were our sprint distances. All right, and we'll progress that back percentage wise, just like you would do a squat. The only real difference would be, all right, here's 100%. All right, week 1 of spring ball in 2024, our receivers on the first week, they averaged 12,500 yards that first week. All right, well, what's 5% greater than that? Right now, we want 5% greater. We're going to work backwards. From what we've seen, there's been a small increment in all of our volume in spring ball and in camp. So we're setting them up with plus 5%. So that way that anything that they accompany before spring ball will be, or once they get spring ball, they've already done more than what they were prescribed, that are going to be prescribed to do. So load base will all work off relative maxes. It's all perceived. We will get heavier when time's required. We will hit heavier singles at anywhere from 90 to 95%. But we don't wear weight belts. We don't wear straps. We don't max out. But we'll get close. We'll touch heavier singles, and that'll kind of help us to pick to where we need to go for the summer. But the GPS is a great tool. It's a great tool to have in your tool belt. It's not the end-all, be-all. Nothing replaces the coach's eye. I think that's the one thing that sports science is very useful. It is very prevalent, but the data you're collecting needs to support what you're seeing. And if it's different, then you need to either check your data or check yourself. Different aspects of technology. We use jump mats every week to kind of test their fatigue rating, but we make that competitive. They jump same day throughout the week. It helps us see who's fatigued and who's not, who's under recovered. And that's a big part. So we have a leaderboard. We have top averages. We have top for each position, and we post those every week. That way guys see kind of where they're at. Same thing when we talk about speeds. We talk about timing gates. We talk about GPS. We post everything to create more competition, but also it helps develop more intent driven. We want to compete with everything we do, but going back to like prescribed volumes of conditioning and player loads, that's what we kind of work back from what we've seen in the past in regards to spring ball. And the same thing with the summer. What we take with camp, we'll be in camp for 4 weeks. We take what we've done the first 3 days, all right, and we work backwards from that to develop throughout the summer. And there are days where it becomes difficult. Like, hey, our receivers, the first 3 days of camp are the hardest days in terms of volume, in terms of load, in terms of sprint distance, especially for our skill guys. So working back from that, it's difficult to get those numbers. It's not easy. You got to put your guys in the fire, and you're out there a long-ass time on the field. How we do that is we have player-led practices for 7-on-7s throughout the summer, and we utilize those to help increase our volumes. Our guys know on team run days will warm up. They'll get 50 minutes to go through what their prescribed practice is for that day. And then once they're done with that, that'll kind of depict how long we need to be on the field. And the guys know that. So guys are out there moving. They're getting real work done. and they know, hey, today, you skill guys, we got to hit 8,000 yards. All right, so they're out there working, and our linemen, they got to hit 5,500. Okay, well, in your guys' player-led practice, you're at 62%. So we got to clean that up. We got to finish it up. So how are we going to do that? So we'll have a plan in mind already, and once we kind of see what they've done, we give them what we call halftime. They get 10 minutes to fuel up, get ready to go, and then we're out there conditioning.
Just a couple follow-ups on that. So we actually just got like halfway through the football season, right before the basketball season started. We actually got connects on for football and for our men's and women's basketball. Way in over our heads right now with it, just because, like you said, it's almost gives you too much freaking shit to look at. What, from your opinion, what would be like the main 2 or 3 things that we should be looking at for football? And obviously, again, we don't have fall camp data, so we don't have it yet, so we can't go back and look. So we're kind of just based off like, here's what mid-season practice kind of volume and game volumes were. But what kind of metrics? Obviously, total yardage, high speed yardage, accumulated acceleration load, like what total exertions? Like, I mean, what are the main metrics that you feel like are the most valuable? And then to follow that up, how much influence is that data having on not only what you guys are doing, but then are you talking to the sport coach and being like, hey, coach, like you just had 3 days back to back, that 3 days in a row where your whatever your player load was above average, like maybe we need to back it off or take a day off, do a walkthrough day. Like how much of that is being influenced by you?
So there's a lot of influence, actually. So the main parameters that we're looking at, and it depends on what your coach wants to see or if they don't want to see it at all. So it depends on where they're at with it. When I first got to ODU, we did not have GPS. So this is something we've built over the time. My head coach was at Penn State prior. They had a lot of GPS. They had a lot of data. And he didn't feel like they got what they really needed to get out of it. So our trial run in spring ball was to prove to him that this could benefit us. So the things that I suggested and what we've ran with were top speed, player load per minute, total distance. We look at yards over 12 miles an hour, yards over 18 miles an hour. And then for linemen, we don't look at yards over 18 because they're probably never going to hit that. So we look at contact intensity for them. The more simple you have it, the better. The less different types of numbers, the better. Now, off to the side, we look at total accelerations, total decelerations. That's more for us than it is for the coaches. I think they, for what our coaches believe and what I believe, they want to know how many yards, how fast did he go. They don't care if he had 114 accelerations. All right. But we don't want the GPS to hinder their on-field accountability. We want this to increase it. How much can you do? All right. Oh, hey, you had a new top player load. That's great. Let's go get another one. All right. But that opens up the conversation of, okay, we're not overtraining. You're under recovering. All right. The harder you work, the harder you have to recover. So we'll put a bigger influence on that, emphasis on that. So if Adam's average player load on a Tuesday, which is arguably your hardest practice, is 499. All right. Well, Adam had a 551. All right. That's great, man. That's like a 3.5% increase. All right. Well, now I'm going to be extra tired for tomorrow's practice. Well, how are you going to mitigate your fatigue? All right. Are you going to make sure you get extra sleep? Are you going to eat a little bit better at dinner tonight? Are you going to hydrate a little bit better? Okay. Are you going to make sure you get in the cold tubs? Are you going to utilize the Normatec boots? Are you going to make sure you're recovering outside of here to put yourself in the best position the next day? So there's a big influence on the GPS data with how we practice and how we play. We're always looking to do more. So if we're sitting at 90%, all right, well, how can we get back to 100? What are we going to base that off of? And everybody's data is individually based. So Everyone has their own profile. It's all individually based off their percentages. And I look at it just like I look at squat. We're going to have 100% on everything. Where are we going to fall with that? Everybody's got a 1 RM from it. And those can change periodically. But on Tuesdays, that's our heaviest workload. So we're going to see our higher volumes. We're going to see higher player loads. On Wednesday is where we want to see more peak velocity for us. So every week, we want to make sure we're prepping them for Saturdays. All right, so how are we going to do that from a standpoint of training, but also from a standpoint of GPS? So every day on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, they need to be within 75 to 85% of their 1 rep max of player load. If they're not 75 to 85%, all right, if they're below, all right, we're going to stay and do extra conditioning to make sure they're within that, or extra change the direction to make sure they're in that perceived player load for that day. All right, because if they're not keeping that player load up, all right, within those percentages, they're going to lose conditioning. They're going to lose their workload capacity. So keeping them between that 75 and 85%. All right. And then on Wednesdays, that's what day we want to hit above 90% of their top speed. If speed is something, if you don't use it, you lose it. So if you're not running fast, all right, 1 time a week, all right, you're going to lose your speed, your top speed. So once you lose your top speed, that speed reservoir you've built up over training is going to slowly start to diminish. And that's when you can start seeing soft tissue injuries. All right, not because they're under recovered or they're not hydrated, they need enough sleep. All right, it's because their muscle tissue is not prepped enough to continue to handle that force application. So keeping them fast all times, we've seen a lot of great results with that. Now, the games are the games. Everyone needs to hit their top speed by Wednesday. If not, we'll do build-ups sometime during practice. We'll go up to guys like, hey, you need to make sure you're pushing. Next chance you get, open it up and go. All right, if you don't, then you'll be doing build-ups after practice. And our coaches are all in on that. We've seen great data from guys that are hitting over 90% Wednesday and their play speed on Saturday. The guys who weren't able to hit it, all right, are playing slower on Saturdays. So there's been great direct correlation with that. Our coaches are all on board with it. But making sure that they're able to stay that distance and that player load threshold between 75 and 85%, and then making sure they're hitting above 90% of their top speed. Those were the biggest contributors to us being able to play the entire game at top speed. So we've had the amount of guys, I want to say it was 11 or 12 guys hit new top speeds after week 10. So to have guys hitting new top speeds that late in the season goes to show you that the training, the tapering, the thresholds that we're staying in throughout the year have helped our guys stay fast and continue to get faster throughout the year. Seeing that, it just equates more buy-in to how we're training as well. It shows us we're on the right path, but also it gets our guys that continuously, you don't have to fight guys to run extra after practice.
Yeah, that's something that we did. This was the first year with football. And the reason we did it was I saw it last year with basketball and like baseball and softball. We use jump mats as well, and we measure, just vertical jump. Real quick, what are you guys just looking at vertical jump, or do you guys do like the 4 jump test to measure
vertical jump? So we call it counter movement jump. They go hands on.
Right, that's exactly what we do.
It's got to be a vertical. There is a standard of that. Guys are kicking their feet forward. It's not, hey, jump again. Okay. We'll give them where, and they've got to hit a certain percentage of what their top jump is as well. So we want them to be over their average throughout their historical average. So anytime they're not, all right, so you'll get 1 to 3 jumps. First jump, if you hit it there, hey, you're good. If you want another jump, go take another jump. If they're trying to compete, go get another jump. You get up to 3. But after your 3rd jump, that's giving us enough knowledge to open up the the conversation of why are you not recovered? Like, what did you not?
And I think that's kind of the thing that when you were talking about the GPS stuff, that's something that, again, with us just now having that, but this year being the first year that we did vertical jump throughout the season with football and soccer and volleyball as well. And then we sprinted football. Now we didn't have GPS to start the season, and we just, with the resources that we have, we don't necessarily have a strength coach out at practice to sit there and kind of monitor it, like during practice, to see, like, have you hit your 90+% threshold. So we lifted on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Thursdays was like our fast lift. Like we would do 2 10-yard dashes, 2 30-yard flies, and we'd measure speeds off that. And then it'd be like a 20-minute lift, like power cleans and stuff like that. But we basically saw the same thing, which is, like, to me, it's like, why the hell have we not been doing this forever? Like, why would we think that we shouldn't be doing max effort sprinting and max effort jumping throughout the entire season? And it was the same deal. I mean, we had guys going into the last week of the season. We had starters last week of the season hitting PRs on vertical jump and on their max velocities and stuff like that. So it was a huge aspect. Couldn't agree with you more. And I think what I was going to say was, the way that you've kind of like flipped the value of the data, like kind of on its head, to where it's like, hey, instead of you're hitting this threshold, we're going to back off. It's like, hey, no, we're going to keep going. And if you're not able to hit it, then it's, what are you not doing? Why are you not recovering? Instead of it being like, hey, let's do less, trying to figure out why can you not do more. I think it's something that I've just, again, not thinking of it in that same perspective, and really making the athletes take ownership over their recovery. So I think that's an awesome kind of just mind trick almost to think about, in terms of like how you're utilizing the data, and not just, telling athletes, hey, you've hit your number, you're done for the day. Like, instead of it being like that, hey, you haven't hit your number. Why have you not hit it? And then let's go figure out a way to make you hit it next week or tomorrow or whatever it may be.
Yeah, there could be, all right, hey, coach, I got demoted from, second string to third string. I took, less reps today. Okay, well, do you want your job back? Well, yeah. All right, well, you better make sure you're in shape to keep that, to go get the job back. So we're going to run until you met the standard of where you're normally at. So, but I know in professional sports, there's athletes that will miss games and miss practice because, all right, they had a certain player load. Well, these aren't not anymore, I guess, multi-million-dollar athletes. Not they shouldn't be treated as such, but they need the opportunity to go compete. That's what they're here for. They're here to play their sport, no matter what it is, and the opportunity to compete. And if we're not creating the standards and putting them in positions to be successful, to go compete, we're only hindering them. And we call it on-field accountability. But again, if we didn't have the coaches buy-in, it would be a lot different. So selling it to the coaches, making sure they understand the data, and we go over it after every practice. So we practice, we're done. Our guys go over their recovery protocols that they have to go through. And if guys are hitting like certain PRs, we're able to tell them right then and there, hey, you need to be making sure you're increasing your recovery for tonight. This is what you're at. You can tell them at dinner as well. But if the coaches weren't as bought in, we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing right now. So that's a big part. But we go over it the following day as a football staff. We go over each individual guy. We go over their numbers, their metrics, what they need to be looking for at that practice. All right, hey, coach, your guy, the last time he hit 90% on his own without us going to tell him was 17 days ago. So he's not running hard at practice. We're having to constantly go tell him. So, and then they get on those guys right then and there. A lot of times it's via text in the staff. I mean, like, why are you not practicing hard? And it always matches up with what they see on film. It's never, oh, I didn't know that. Nothing replaces the coach's eye. The data is there just to support what you see and what you feel, because coaching is an art form. Numbers and data can sometimes skew that. So you got to make sure that it's supporting what you're seeing. You got to trust your coaching and your instincts to know what you're looking at and have the data support. Now, sometimes you don't like the data. You think, man, we're out there crushing it today. And you look at it and it's nowhere near what you wanted it to be. Or our guys are smoked. We had to have done more. It's not what you thought it was. So you got to check yourself in the mirror and go back to the drawing board sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. I do want to start to wrap it up just to respect your time and everything. But I do have at least one more question, and I'll let everybody else kind of ask as well. But so we had literally no soft tissue injuries this year. I mean, we had a couple like groin like tweaks during camp, but again, camp is like so chaotic at this level because you got 50% of your team doesn't do shit over the summer, which we're trying to get better at. But we did have like 4 labrums, shoulder labrums. Our coach looks at it as the worst thing ever, and it is. 2 guys are going to have postseason surgery. 1 guy had to have surgery in season. But my mindset was like, hey, the 2 guys that have to have surgery after the season, we also were able to get them through the rest of the season with a torn labrum. So you can also look at that as kind of a positive to an extent. But that's kind of one thing that I've been racking my brain about the most this offseason is if there's something that I'm missing. Are we not pressing enough? And I know it's impossible for you to know an answer without looking at what we're doing, but just from your opinion, is that something that you guys have dealt with? Shoulder labrums? I mean, I feel like it has to be common regardless of how great your training protocols are. But just any input on that?
So I think that's the most common injury in football. I think it's the most. The amount of people who have labrum tears that don't know it is very high. Now, also, I've had 3 labrum tear surgeries on my left shoulder, and I have a torn labrum in my right shoulder from 2011 that I got in camp that I never had surgery on. There's an athlete who played at West Virginia, was drafted, and it was the first pick of the draft in the 2nd round last year, starts for the Steelers, and he has labrum tears and is fine. There's a receiver I've trained that draft pick to the Giants. He has a labrum tear and is fine. So I think it depends on how bad they are, number one. Now, I do think they're very common. If you take your entire team and go MRI everybody's shoulders, you're probably looking like 30, 40% of your guys have at least a micro tear in there. They're very common. These are modern day gladiators that we're telling them to run as hard as you can into people and use your hands doing it. Sometimes I don't think it's the pressing that you're probably lacking. I would look at just like shoulder stability. That would be my first thing I would check. We had 1 labral tear this year. The guy had surgery. He had a labrum tear coming in. We knew it. He was a transfer. We knew what he had. I believe in how we train, and I thought, hey, we can train. We'll get us stronger. I'm a prime example of it. 6 weeks in, he chose to have surgery, and he's no longer with us now. He chose to have surgery and left 3 days later. So it is what it is. But I think you'd have to go back into the drawing board, look at, posterior-wise what your shoulder's doing, different ranges of motion. How was he hit? How were they hit? I would say it's probably not one hit, to be honest. It's probably a lead up of that. I would check that first. And then, do you straight bar bench year round?
Not year round. We didn't in the fall during the season really at all. We did a little bit in camp and then we stopped. And honestly, one of the reasons that we stopped was because of the guys that were having it. And what we started doing was basically we replaced barbell benching with like either dumbbell bench and or like med ball floor punches. And then we started doing a lot more farmer's carries. And honestly, I think going back to just the integrity of the shoulder girdle, I think the farmer's carries are something that we really can't not do without anymore in season, in my opinion. I think it's just something that helps these guys. And 2 of the guys that happened to were a linebacker who's about 15 pounds too small, and then a defensive back that's also about 15 pounds too small. So it's like one of those things where there is other factors, but again, it's still, at the end of the day, it's still something that I don't like. I'm not sleeping comfortably knowing that we had 3 guys have to not be at their best throughout the whole season. So it's something that, again, like I'm just trying to pick as many people's brains as I can. But yeah, we honestly, even just switching things to like floor press too. Like we don't do as much bench pressing as much as we are going to be floor pressing probably this spring, this summer, even into the next fall.
How much do you curl?
During the season, not at all, hardly.
I know that sounds like, why would you ask me about my bicep curls? Just where the bicep tendon runs through that joint, the stronger and more girth there is to that belly, the more stability it'll also help in that shoulder as well. Because a lot of times when you get shards through that girdle, that shoulder girdle, you're going to have damages to your biceps tendon. And that can create more discomfort, but it also can create more instability. So just having a stronger bicep will also help. I know it sounds like all right, man, we're
No,
trying to, but
it makes sense.
where the muscle is, you can have some, and we tell our guys why we do curls. We do curls, and we'll do high volume. We'll do heavier bicep curls for that reason, for elbow health, but also just to assist in the stability of that joint.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. Again, it's something that we do in the spring, but in the fall I get 45 minutes twice a week with these guys.
Yeah.
Because we got 300 other athletes that we got to get through the weight room, and it's one of those things where like probably a mistake that I've made is I cut out I keep kind of like the compound moves, and I cut out some of the accessory biceps, shoulder stability exercises, just because it's like let's try to get all that done with our rows and our pull-ups and our our presses and things. But I think it's something we definitely need to have some sort of a little bit better system, whether it's guys are coming in voluntarily to do that kind of stuff, just to make sure we're getting it done. But the last question I have for you is kind of just, what's some things that over your coaching career, going back to as an intern, as a GA, and now being in a director role, what's some of the biggest things that you've learned, some mistakes maybe that you've made, and kind of giving these guys on here some advice?
The one thing that is stuck with me and that'll never leave me is no job is too small. So even as the director, I'm going to help clean racks. I'm going to clean floors. I'm going to strip bars. I'm going to help set up, because we are a team and our job is to help the main team we're training. But no job is too small. That is something that I take a lot of pride in. But also being a consistent coach, like being the same person every day. It's difficult. It shows toughness, but it's also what the athletes deserve. They deserve the same person every day. It doesn't matter what happens in life outside. You've got to check your ego at the door. And when you go in, you got to understand that you're there to serve the athletes and to make them better. And anything you can do to help the program or the team is up to you that day. So that is the big things for me. Mistake-wise, you'll never stop making mistakes. You're always going to make mistakes, but you can't be closed-minded. You have to be willing to listen to other people and to take what other people know and make yourself better. I look at this as two weapons. I love the military, and I think of using your weapons. There's two types of them. You've got a sniper rifle that you're going to use to make very direct kills, for lack of better terms, I guess. Direct kills. They're going to be very planned. They're going to be very methodical. They're going to be very stoic. All right. But then you've got close combat. You're going to need your pistol. All right. That's going to be shooting from the hip. It's going to be close. It's going to be in your face type of a battle. So having your two weapons as you go through this, they've both got to be loaded, they've got to be cleaned, and they've got to be ready to fire. So I use those in aspects of how we coach and how we train, but also how we build relationships. Getting to know the athletes is only going to allow you to coach them harder. Sitting down with them, just having a small conversation. The more you know them, the more they're going to trust you. The more they trust you, the harder you can push them to reach their goals, not yours, their goals. All right. I use this terminology with my son a lot, especially when he and I are training. So, all right, his name is Maximus. Maximus, if we were going down a dark alley, would you be willing to go down that alley with me? He said, well, yeah, I trust you. Okay. What about if there's 10 guys down there and they're all bigger and stronger than me? Would you trust me to walk down that alley? He's like, well, yeah, you're my dad. What if it was your friend? What if somebody you don't have as good a relationship with? Well, I don't know. Building that trust with someone to walk down that dark alley with them. All right. That's how it is to get them to go into dark places, to be able to push them out of their comfort zone, to get them to really train as hard as they possibly can. All right, so just building that relationship is going to help take the athlete a little further than what they need, all right, or they want to go sometimes, but it's what they need to get better.
Man, that's fucking awesome. I love the dark alley thing. I got my wife and I just had our daughter. She's 8 months old now, and like that's one of those things where like part of my life now is like just being the best version for her. Like, I mean, it's always been trying to be the best version for the athletes and being that same person, like you said, every day. But now it's like, shit, everything means a little bit more. Everything's a little different now. And that's awesome. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Everything you said was great. What do you guys have questions wise for Chad? Anything?
I wanted to ask him about that paid internship opportunity, if it was going to be open in the summer.
Yeah, get with Adam after this, and he'll get you my contact, and we can talk about that.
Okay, thank you.
Coach, I was wondering when you were talking about a lot of time out here, coaches say, what does this team need? I was wondering, like, when you and your staff get together, is there something like after a season that what are some like KPIs you guys look at? Like, hey, did they need, obviously sometimes you look at mental toughness, or let me look back at past program success. What are some things when you guys get together and say, I love the Weakness Wednesday thing. That's super cool, looking at obviously what they need on the field. But what are some things you and your staff look at when you say, hey, what does this specific team need?
So we go back to reoccurring injuries. All right, what was something we saw a lot of, and how can our training increase? What are we missing in our training to help benefit or mitigate those type of reoccurring injuries? So go back to the drawing board. All right, this is what we had. Looking up sets, reps, how we progressed different things, amount of pulls, the presses, or what did we have that didn't help us in season, like what we did all year off-season training. Now, again, there's exceptions to every rule. Like Adam said, this guy was 15 pounds too light. He was going to get hurt eventually. We just didn't know when. So, all right, hey, were the guys who had these reoccurring injuries, all right, were they all smaller? Were they young? All right, what did the hits look like? What happened when they got hurt? All right, what can our training do to benefit that? So the injury report from the end of year season, that's the main thing we look at. But also looking back, all right, well, this guy had trouble hitting his 90%. All right, what didn't we do to make him ready? All right, this guy struggled in games, third quarter wise. This guy cramped in this game, this quarter. Why did that happen? How can we, training or education wise, benefit that particular athlete in that particular scenario, to build them, to make them stronger, and make sure there's not any weak links. But the main thing, injury wise, we go to the injury report.
Cool. All right, well, fellas, I appreciate it. Chad, man, I really appreciate it, and it was great catching up with you, and hopefully we can try to do this again at some point. Especially, I definitely might be reaching out with you maybe later in the spring when we actually get a chance to start looking more at our GPS stuff. And
yeah, let me know.
I don't want to get stuck in the mud with it and overthink it, but it's also one of those things where, like you said, if we have the tool and we're spending the money on it and our coach wants to utilize it, I want to be able to provide him with that service. So, anyways, appreciate all of you guys. I'll definitely make sure I share the recording with you guys if you want to share it with anybody else. So, thank you.
All right, have a good one.
Thanks, Coach.
Yep. Thank you, guys.